How do you paint a portrait? By the end of this video, you're going to understand the whole process, all the thinking behind it, and it's actually pretty simple because it boils down to one principle applied over and over again. So before I start, I actually did a little egg color study here. So what that means is imagine turning the head into a simple egg shape. So kind of like this kind of an egg shape, smoothing off all the features so it's actually just an egg instead of an actual face. This is the way that I like to start drawing portraits, is starting from a simple egg shape and then sculpting into it, sculpting big to small. If you'd like to learn more about drawing portraits, then I have a video linked below working big to small like this. And actually for this color egg study, the YouTuber Marco Bucci has a really good video about that, so I'll also link that below as well. All right, but so for this person's head, this plane on the side of their head is facing towards the light, the warm white light of the sun. So the skin tone, which is this kind of orangey red color, gets affected by the color of the light. So it gets pulled more towards the light white color of the light on that plane, right? And then as it turns towards us, let's say like this plane or this one here, these planes are still lit but are less heavily affected by the color of the light, and so we see more of the actual skin tone color itself. So it gets a little bit more saturated and a little bit more of that orangey red in there. So right now I'm trying to achieve that in my little egg watercolor color study of this person's face, and I haven't yet got really to the shadow side of things, but I'm trying to get the fact that the side facing out to the sun is getting lighter and a bit less saturated, and then as the egg rounds towards us, we're going to get more of the color of the skin itself. Also, at the point where the light meets the shadow, it's really fun to increase the saturation a bit, because there you might get some of that subsurface scatter where light can go through, like pass through the surface of the skin, come out the other side. And sometimes I just kind of cheat that in because it's great to have a little transition between the light and the dark, just for the design anyway. Once we're getting into the shadow, there's more variety. So we had a little bit of variety in the lit side, but in the shadow side, there's way more variety. So in the planes that are facing downwards in the shadows, like on the underside of the nose, inside here on the eye socket, the bottom part of the cheek, normally it would be like this part as well of the jaw and chin, but he's got a beard which is kind of obscuring this a little bit. But we're going to get this warm bounce light. So it's a bit more orangey where stuff is facing downwards. So on my egg, I'm going to assume that the egg doesn't have a beard, but the underside of that egg is going to get more of that warm bounce light. So the light of the sun, hits, the ground or whatever, bounces up, and we get this weak bounce light into those shadows. Then, coming off this very, very red object, the surfboard, we're going to have light bouncing and hitting those planes facing sideways. So for the side of the egg that's facing to the surfboard, I'm trying to add a strong red color. And you can see that on his head here, on these planes that are facing out to the side like this. All right. Now I'm not subdividing my egg into like this bit is nose, this bit is cheek. It's just one big egg, but I am getting all the different directions, right? Because the egg is facing out all the different directions. Out to the sun, down to the ground, across to the surfboard, and also facing up in the shadow towards the blue sky. And so this little bit of shadow is going to catch the light of the blue sky. It's not really facing the surfboard to catch a lot of that light. So over here, I might gray down some of the colors a bit or cool them down, make them a little bit more towards the blue. They're not going to turn blue, but it's going to be a little bit less strong of a warm orangey color. So you know what? My egg color study might not look like much, but by doing it, I've thought through the light and the color that I'm going to need to do in this portrait. And so just to kind of show you what comes next, I did a very quick like mini portrait showing how I just basically am going to be doing the same thing as on that egg, but subdividing it. So I'll think about the little kind of egg shape of the nose, of the cheek or whatever, and apply those same colors. And this is how we're going to build up the portrait. Now on to the actual portrait painting. You'll notice here that, yeah, I've drawn this head first as a sort of egg shape, and I have videos about the drawing process linked below. Then I've thought about the next level of shapes, which is like the eyeballs, not the irises and the eyelashes and the tiny shapes, but just like look at these big simple forms, you know, of this face. Like forget about the actual mouth. There's like a ball shape underneath the mouth. There's a ball shape of the chin. Even if you look just at the cheeks, right, they have a form to them. So if you stay with me here on the reference, look at that form on the cheek. And one way we could think about that cheek is one plane facing up, one plane facing down, and one plane facing out to the side. Yeah, so you could break the cheek down that way, right? Something like this. Up, down, and to the side. You know, you could even think of this nose as almost like an egg shape with some, you know, some divots in it and stuff like that. And so that is how I'm doing the drawing. And hopefully if we have the colors, the values, the hue, the saturation that we need for each plane, facing up, facing sideways, facing down, we just apply that to each of these forms, these subforms. Now in my painting process, this is watercolor, I've chosen to sort of start off, roughly speaking, with some local colors. Not quite, but I'm trying to basically get roughly the color of the skin. Where the light is hitting, I'm already starting to keep it a bit lighter. I've already started to add a bit of extra red in a few places. But I know that I'm going to be adding more layers on the top, especially in the shadows. It's a little bit hard with watercolor to go lighter. You can do with some gouache and things like that, or by rubbing it back. But I've already started to lighten those areas. But especially for the shadow side, I'm just trying to get the sort of local color of the skin, that sort of orangey red. And then I'm going to layer on, you know, different colors for different planes, which are facing in different directions after that. It just makes it easier for me to kind of think in these like simple layers or stages. And hopefully if I have some of this warm orangey color down, it will shine through the subsequent layers and you'll get that sense of the person's skin underneath. So hair is a little bit darker, it frames the face, so I try and put some of that in. Okay, I'm going to fast forward a little bit here. Okay, so now we're getting to the shadows, and have a look at what I've done so far here. All those planes that are facing down, so if you look on the reference, look, this plane of the nose facing down, this part of the cheek facing down, inside the eye socket facing down, you know, this plane of the cheek facing down, and so on. It's catching that orangey warm light. I feel like maybe standing on some sand or something, so that warm sunlight bouncing off that is bouncing light up into those downward facing planes. So I'm trying to get that. But then you'll see soon these planes, right, that are just facing to the blue sky, kind of facing up more. Not this one normally would be also facing to the blue sky, but there's this massive surfboard here, so instead it's getting more red. So not doing that yet, but just those planes facing to the blue sky. Hopefully I'll put some blue in there and gray those areas down a little bit. There it is. You can see I'm mixing in some blue into the mix here on those planes because they're facing to the blue sky. So I'm kind of transitioning between the planes. So it's this exact same set of ideas as on the egg, but just subdivided. Now applying that to the cheek, to the nose, and so on. at some point I am going to start to apply red to those planes that are facing towards the surfboard. So maybe we can fast forward a little bit to that. Okay, there it is. Not even doing it subtly, right? Just going all out with the red to try and get how the light is bouncing off that surfboard onto the head. So I'm trying to get the upward facing planes and the planes facing out to the light blue sky to get grayed down a little bit, to get a bit more blue, to cool down, but to really heat up those planes like on the side of the nose. So it's just like the egg, but I'm just doing it across these subforms of the face the whole time. All right, so I'm going to fast forward again a little bit. We haven't yet put in the eyes. It looks a bit freaky at this point. No eyebrows and no eyes. And you'll notice that the whites of the eyes, they're all mostly in shadow. They look pretty warm colored. They're not that far from the skin tone actually, even though they're supposed to be the whites of the eyes, right? I've started to put in the eyes with a red paint for now. So this person currently has no eyebrows and just red eyes. It's very freaky. But now we're going to put in those darks of the eyebrows. And we will put in the strong paint for the irises. The reason I've held back, one reason, is that when the face is facing right towards us, I often have a lot of trouble with that sort of symmetry of the eyes. I often have one being a little bit wonky relative to the other. So I don't want to go all the way to really dark paint. It's just a little bit harder to pull it back. I kind of know I'm going to need to correct later on. So I need to put in the lips. Now the lips have, the upper lip is facing more down, the lower lip is facing more up. So I feel like the lower lip is getting a bit more of that blue light from the sky, and it's going to get, therefore, a little bit more grayed down. Whereas the upper lip is facing down, and it's going to get a little bit more of that orangey warm light. So I'm trying to do that. I have a little bit of a struggle with it. I've also got to kind of draw the mouth as I go. But I'm trying to get that color transition, almost the same value across the upper lip and the lower lip, but just changing the color, right? From this warm color on the upper lip to a cooler color on the lower lip. There is a section of the lower lip that's actually lit up. And so that is a separate thing, right? That is a completely different value. But for the part of the mouth in shadow, which is most of it, you can see I'm struggling because I'm having to try to draw this mouth and get the right colors all at once. Watercolor is more forgiving than you might think. You can blot it away if it's gone wrong for you. So I'll fast forward here a little bit. Put in the blue around him. It's very important to establish the context. Put in the surfboard so you understand why some of the planes are catching that red bounce light. Put in the dark of the wetsuit. It's really nice to give context to the values. How light, using some white gouache to get the highlights, the shiny bits on the skin, and also how light the beard gets. So then skipping forward towards the end of the painting, there is the portrait drawing process, which is one thing. And then there's the painting process adds on a layer of complexity. But all of that complexity comes down to the same thing that was in that egg. The same stuff. Which plane is facing which way and what light is it catching? If you can paint the head as an egg shape with those different planes catching different light and therefore having different colors, and if you can draw the head in terms of big simple forms and then medium-sized forms, like the cheek forms and stuff like that, which again, there's a video about exactly how to do that linked below, you can just combine those two skills and then you can paint the portrait, which is awesome. And by the way, same thing applies to like painting figures, for example. You'll note that all of our figure drawing tutorials kind of come down to similar simple shapes: rib cage, egg shape in the head, very, very simple big forms across the figure. And so again, you just would paint that same way, right? Which direction are these planes facing? What light would they be catching? And that's it. So super fun, super simple, keeping this one process in mind. We've made a new guide called How to Draw an Eye. Link is below. It's free and it's really different to the normal tutorials about how to draw an eye because it's not about the details of the eye. It's about how do you get that really simple, almost abstract shape that actually appears when you do a good portrait drawing. So check out these Zorn paintings, for example. It's not a super rendered detailed eye. It's an interesting abstract shape, but it's a very specific shape. If you can learn how to get to that shape, which is what this guide teaches you, it actually also holds the secret of all drawing. So that's really cool. Check out the link below.